What is going on, Stack in the Box? My name is Mike Luciano from the Jet Press. Welcome to the Week 12 recap, our favorite little Monday show. Thank you so much for joining in wherever you may be, however you may be listening. Thank you so much. Make sure to subscribe, Stack in the Box. Make sure to give this stream a like if you like it, and make sure to give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. Statistical reasons, it is just to get us up those charts, those review charts. It would mean the world to us. However you show your support, we're very thankful. So let's dive right into it because week 12, I think this was the end for a lot of people nominally because there were a lot of poor performances kind of across the slate on the Thanksgiving Day schedule. After that, that Black Friday game, we'll get to that. Don't worry about that. But one guy officially got his pink slip along with a couple of his coaching mates in Frank Reich, formerly the Carolina Panthers. It's weird to lead with Titans Panthers. Not really much to take from the Titans. I mean, the offense wasn't good. Will Levis looked okay. Levis looked good enough to get a couple more years, I think, as the quarterback, but that's all immaterial. Frank Reich is gone. And I got to go put my hand up, and I got to admit I was wrong. The accountability is big. Admit your L's. I was wrong on Frank Reich because I thought he did a very good job in Indianapolis. I thought he never had a stable quarterback situation. He was always getting new guys in and out. Old Philip Rivers, old Matt Ryan. Carson Wentz actually almost got him to the playoffs, and I think Irsay moved up. Jim Irsay did the owner earlier. I thought he got kind of a raw deal at the end. I thought he'd be perfect for Carolina. Number one, he hired kind of a rock star staff. Ejiro Evero, very well respected coordinator. Thomas Brown, he was kind of a star assistant in waiting. The offensive coordinator. Josh McCown, quarterback coach. Deuce Staley, who nobody has a bad word to say about Deuce Staley. That's had him on their team, played for him. The owner, they all love him. And it just has failed in the worst way possible. Carolina's 1-10. The one win, they scored 15 points, I believe, against the Texans. They currently were in possession of the number one pick, but because of the Bryce Young trade, Bears have it right now, so they can't even reap the rewards of this. And then, of course, Bryce Young playing very poorly. 9 touchdowns, 8 picks, only one game with a passer rating over 100. His QBR, his EPA, whatever stat you want to use for quarterbacks, it's all way down the bottom of the league. And it's made even worse by the fact CJ Stroud going immediately after looks like a world beat. Now, I'm surprised they made this move in season. I feel like the writing was kind of on the wall. David Tepper is a very impatient owner. He's now fired between this and Charlotte FC, his MLS team that he owns. He's fired 4 coaches in the last 18 months, including one of them in the MLS who made the playoffs. So this is not a very patient guy. And I can see being impatient in the regard that they were a little more patient than most with Grant Rule. You just said, you know what, I'm sick of this. I got enough money. Don't worry about having to pay him his full contract. Like I'm sick of this. I can't watch anymore. So I got it from that regard. But and Reich certainly didn't help himself with the play calling, with I'm taking it back, I'm giving it back. He just didn't seem like a guy who really had control of the situation. He built an okay defense, but Bryce Young was regressing. And I don't know what the future holds for Bryce Young. I think it's certainly better than what he's shown right now. But man, he did not get a ton of tools. Number one, he got Bryce Young, who was proven to be inferior to CJ Stroud, and he confirmed. Will Levis, I think, looked better than him in what he's shown. And even before he was hurt, I think Anthony Richardson was playing extremely well, probably better than Young has been in Carolina. But again, both Young and Reich, not a ton to work with. Adam Thielen, who's pretty bad this year, as the numbers say, he's your number one target. Jonathan Mingo was like an early day 3 guy. They used a top 50 pick on him. He's been terrible. There's that clip going around on Twitter, making the rounds where all he has to do is stop and catch the ball, and he's wide open. He can't decelerate, and he fades out of bounds. And you're thinking, my goodness, what happened to Jonathan Mingo? The offensive line, obviously not very good. Ike Ekwonu was pressed hard. There's really not a ton to hold on to in Carolina. Even Miles Sanders, who they gave a ton of money to, doing nothing. So this is a move that had to be made. He now joins such infamous names as I think Pete McCulley with the Niners way back when they got 9 games. Names like Urban Meyer, Daniel Hackett, Bobby Petrino as guys who did not finish their first season as a coach. And also with a few guys, I believe, who has now been fired before the end of the season in consecutive years. He was fired early with Indianapolis last year. If they're this bad, 1-10, and Bryce Young is still cooking, I think maybe they hold on to him because they just put so much of their future and their present really into Young, and we haven't really seen anything that says Young's gonna be an amazing quarterback. I'm still holding out hope because I just love the playmaking. I think the accuracy is just getting swallowed up by this avalanche where everything's going wrong and nobody's playing well. So you do want to see him in a better situation. On the surface, Reich seemed like a good hire. Experienced guy, offensive guy, former quarterback. That's who you want for your young quarterback. And instead, Frank Reich gets pink slip. Now, Scott Fitter, the GM, I think should also get a pink slip. He drafted horribly. He made that trade where Ryan Poles, who stinks at trading, fleeced him, and the Bears got a substantially better haul than Carolina got. They're going to be paying for this for years to come. And the Panthers have done this before where they fired the coach, haven't fired the GM, and the other way around. So I think eventually Federer is going to go. And now they're in a weird position because now they're in total reboot mode, right? Sell off what you have, get more picks, build for the future. Well, weren't they supposed to be in total reboot mode when they got Bryce Young? Because now you got a whole new staff coming in with no loyalty to Bryce Young and a staff that's probably seen him play poorly. So immediately the well's going to be poisoned. It feels very much like what happened to Justin Fields with the Bears, who we'll get to. We discussed the Monday night game coming up now. It feels like the Fields situation when they brought in Matt Eberflus, where everything was bad around him, and the new coaching staff may just not be skilled enough to dig themselves out of that hole. So Young's, I think, really got to be worried now. Like his clock is ticking. I know they're going to start him for a couple more years just because of how much they gave in. They've got to give him every opportunity to see if he's going to be a franchise quarterback. I get all that, but it just what a nightmare. Coach didn't work. Players terrible. Infighting. Number one pick looks really bad. Meddling, aggressive ownership. GM doesn't know what he's doing. Even in a weak division like the NFC South, even if Young becomes good, even if you qualify with those two things, there's a lot of heavy lifting that needs to be done before Carolina's even can be taken halfway seriously as a postseason team, a division-winning team, and it stinks. It stinks for Bryce Young. It stinks for fans who had to sit through Matt Rule and were sold a bill of goods on a new era starting with Young and Reich at the center of it all, and right back to square young, just square one, excuse me for that Freudian slip. But you maybe still be at square young. You don't know if Bryce is going to be any good. And in the entirety of the next 2 years of the franchise are going to be sacrificed to the altar of figuring out if he's good, which is not where you wanted to be. Oh, you thought you were going to be the Texans and C.J. Stroud and DeMeco Ryan. Here you are once again back as one of the also-rans in the league. So now that the Panthers have fired their coach, we can go and look at the rest of the league and do our stock up, stock down, and figure out who thrived and who was terrible. And we'll start with who thrived because Jalen Hurts, for as many doubts I've had about Jalen Hurts, and not the old school, he can't throw from the pocket. Like, he can. I just was not overly thrilled with his play this year. He came into this game with 57 fewer passing yards than Kenny Pickett, or more passing yards than Kenny Pickett. And he was turning the ball over more, 9 interceptions, playing with a new coordinator. He just didn't seem all together. Something was off. I know he's obviously playing hurt. Something didn't look right. And it looked like things were just going to completely capitulate against the Bills because he struggled mightily in the first half. Couldn't get anything going unless the Bills gave him help with penalties. And then Jalen Hurts, man, just turns on the Jets. 5 total touchdowns, 3 in the air, 2 on the ground. Granted, aided by Buffalo with some poor turnovers, some bad penalties. We get all that. But as somebody who was skeptical coming in of the Jalen Hurts MVP brigade, I just didn't know if he himself was that individually more consideration. I mean, I don't have anything to say with this. He shut me up big time. He shut me up big time. The Eagles, I still know how they lost to the Jets, but it's not that they look like world beaters because they don't look like world beaters. But they keep finding ways. It's this unattractive, grimy, mucky, run-heavy slog of a game guys play, and nobody can stop it because it's effective enough where if you're just basic talent level with what they have in the offensive line and on that offensive depth chart, you can just bull rush and bulldoze most teams. And then when they need the extra gear against teams like Dallas, teams like Buffalo, teams like Kansas City, that's a tough 3 games in a row. We've come out unscathed in all of them. Sirianni, I know that he was kinda like a high-flying passing guy actually under Frank Reich, in Indianapolis. I don't know if Frank Reich retires, maybe he goes back to help Sirianni out with the Eagles again, but that he has completely reinvented himself. This is an ugly, ground and pound, we're gonna hit you in the mouth, tough Philly team. And I kinda like that. It feels like this is what a team in Philly should look like. They're winning. It's the way that corresponds with the city and its fan base. There's something very poetic about it. Maybe I'm sappy. How could you not be romantic about football? I get it, but there's just something about the way this team is that it just I can't quit him. I can't quit him. Now a guy I can quit and who I've quit multiple times, fricking Mac Jones, man. What is this? Tommy DeVito had a quarterback rating of 7 out of 100. He got sacked a bajillion times, and yet he comes out a second straight win because the Patriots, for everybody that wants to rip Bill Belichick, the funny thing is Bill Belichick, defensive guy, his defense, still very good. They've given up 40 points in the last 3 games. Hard to ask him to do much more, especially with the injuries, a lot of young guys in more prominent roles, and they've lost all 3 of them. I was not a fan of Mac Jones as a prospect. Thought he had the one crazy year as a starter that was obviously helped by COVID-19, so he didn't really get the full SEC atmosphere. He didn't really get like going on the road to an 80,000 seat stadium. He got COVID. And it was kind of a wonky process. And it landed on Mac Jones, who certainly not a great athlete, certainly not the best arm ever, but the whole point was he was supposed to be this savant of a football player who didn't make mistakes and was just ultra ruthless and efficient. And even though we knew the Pro Bowl year as a rookie was kind of fugazi, he really only had like a couple good games that bumped his stats up. I mean, you at least saw promise, certainly. Anybody who didn't see promise in the rookie year is just lying. Now, obviously, I've had my criticisms of Josh McDaniels, but whatever he was doing, he worked with Mac Jones. I don't know what it was, but it worked. In the last 2 years, Mac is now 8-17 as a starter. He's thrown 24 touchdowns and 23 picks, which the decision making was the one reason he got picked as high as he did. Now he's throwing all these picks. And then Mac Jones has now been benched, I believe, 5 times, including 4 times this year for Bailey Zappi, who's, again, not particularly good either. The Patriots, I've heard a lot of rumors of if they get a high pick, if they go for Marvin Harrison Jr., maybe one of the 2 top tackles being Olu Fashanu and Joe Alt. Maybe they do that and give Mac another year. You can't give Mac another year at this point. It is quarterback or bust. And then what a year to be horrible at quarterback for the Patriots who haven't been horrible in God knows how long. Now they're going to get maybe their pick, depending on who is above them, of Caleb Williams and Drake May, both of whom are some of the best prospects we've seen in years. One of them is going to be a Patriot. Mac Jones, I think in that game, officially killed whatever chance he had of coming back to New England for a 4th year as a starter. Maybe he'll catch on as a backup. He'll be a fine backup. He'll play for a while in this league. But as a starter, as a franchise guy, done. That is a dinosaur. Don't even entertain that anymore. I won't even engage with you if you bring that up as a serious argument. Jaguars, Texans, maybe a future of the AFC battle with Trevor Lawrence and CJ Stroud duking it out. Feel bad for Stroud and the Texans because Stroud was cooking once again. It's some ill-timed penalties. That kick comes up just short. He had like a big 70-yard play to Tank Dell got called back early in the game. Who knows? So that would have changed things. But Jacksonville wins the day. 8-3 now, one of the top seeds in the AFC. For a brief moment, they were number 1. They've been knocked down a little bit now that some other teams. I was thrilled with some of the improvements that I've seen with the Jaguars offense. And obviously, Trevor Lawrence had the one nightmare game against the Niners, but other than that, I felt like they just weren't playing to his strengths a lot, which are a lot of deep down the field stuff, a lot of on the move stuff. They weren't really doing it. It felt very predictable. But they were using Calvin Ridley and Evan Engram and Christian Kirk in very predictable ways. What they've done lately is use Calvin Ridley in a lot more of in-breaking routes, which he's amazing at. That's like one of the things he's been good at going back to Atlanta and Alabama. Excels at that. They've been doing it more. In the last 2 weeks, Lawrence has been sensational. Jaguars have won both games after a really tough 49ers game that I think caused them to kind of reevaluate things. And here they are again. Now, the Texans, I still think will be a playoff team, but I think it'll be very hard now for them to win the AFC South. And Jacksonville may not be the best home field advantage in football, but I think it's certainly getting up there now that the fan base is a little bit more engaged with how good Lawrence and Doug Peterson have been. I'm happy they figured it out. I'm happy stubborn Doug Peterson didn't keep sticking with Press Taylor and say what Press Taylor's doing is fine. He said, you know what, we need to get a little bit more razzle dazzle in this offense. And he did it, and he won on the road against a very good team that people won't shut up about. A lot of credit to Doug Peterson. That was a hard earned win, no matter what the officials what happened with them in that game. I almost hesitated putting Brandon Staley in my stock down after this game because what do you say at this point? But my God, man. And now this is the game a lot of people are starting to kill Justin Herbert. A lot of people are starting to come around like, oh, Justin Herbert's not that good, which is stupid. I'm sorry, it's stupid. Well, he's not winning it. He was throwing the ball multiple times on a game-winning drive to Alex Erickson. Do you know who that is? Well, he's the punt returner from the Bengals a while back, and was so bad in the preseason that he was cut by the Jets. The Jets said he was not good enough for their skill position, and that's who he's throwing. Well, that's an excuse. No, it's a reason. There are reasons. I think Kellen Moore has been dealt kind of a tough hand. I mean, he's got one receiver, Keenan Allen, and even he's declining. Mike Williams gone. Quentin Johnston really, really struggling. He'll eventually, I think, turn it around, but it does look kind of rough with him over Jordan Addison. Even though with all the hindsight picks, oh, how could they have done that? Quentin Johnston was regarded as pretty much a first-round lock, like everybody. He just hasn't clicked for whatever reason. So this is not really an amazing offense. Austin Eckler's a fantasy football guy. He is. If you watch Austin Eckler, he's not good between the tackles. He just straight up is not good. So it's very similar to the Philip Rivers era. Even though Rivers, I think, had more weapons, Herbert's got to be Superman. And I put a lot of that on coaching because Staley just can't get out of his own way. At least the defense was good this game. Yeah, until Zay Flowers ran an end around 40 yards that he had, I believe, a 1% chance of scoring on next gen stats. Until that happened. I know that the Spanoses are cheap. They don't fire guys before they have to. I don't think they fired a coach in season in decades, but you got Justin Herbert, man. At a certain point, you got to say, you know what, enough is enough. I don't know if they promote Kellen Moore. I think that's what I would do if I were the Spanoses because I just really value Moore's offensive creativity. He'll have jobs in the NFL as a coordinator or a coach until he wants to leave because I think he's just that smart. But Brandon Staley, I cannot see a path to the Chargers, even with Herbert winning anything worth a damn. With Brandon Staley as their coach, there's no juice. There's no nothing. It's the most vanilla, plain white rice coach ever. And the fact they keep, in a sense, committing to him by not firing him. When Joshua Daniels got fired and Frank Reich got fired, so it's not like you're being unprecedented here. It's just puzzling to me. You know what else is puzzling is them freaking Denver Broncos. I had them left for dead. One win, horrible defense, bad teams beating them. Russell Wilson looks washed, and then last 5 games, 5 wins in a row. And looking at how their schedule goes, you make a good case right now. I think Denver might sneak into the playoffs as a wild card. Vance Joseph deserves immeasurable credit. That defense gave up 70 points. He philosophically uprooted everything, simplified things, and what do you know? Defense has been pretty good lately. Russell Wilson, I don't think is necessarily playing as good as the stats will say. It's Sean Payton, so it's high completion percentage, not a lot of interceptions. Like he gets that out of guys. He had Trevor Siemian throwing like 11 touchdowns in 3 picks. At least the Sean Payton offense after he left in New Orleans. Like That's just what he does, what his offense does. But Russ has legitimately, I thought, been so much better than he was under Nathaniel Hackett earlier in the year. So much so that anybody freaking out about the Russ contract, it's certainly not good, but there's a formula now where you can win a lot with Russ, especially in the AFC West not looking as strong as I thought it was going into the year with the Raiders being a mess. I know Antonio Pierce kind of stabilized the ship. I mean, they still have a quarterback. And the Chargers being a mess, even though they do have a quarterback and don't have anything else. Denver's dangerous, man. Legitimately. I know they beat up on the Browns, and the Browns literally have nobody at quarterback right now. I mean, Joe Flacco might be activated. That's the level they're at now. But that's the best defense in the league. I don't care how you score them. 29 points is nothing to sneeze at when you're playing a defense of that level. Dolphins Jets in a game that there's nothing to even analyze about this game. Like I have Nathaniel Hackett in the lockdown, but as I've seen the Jet Press podcast, if you're a Jets fan, like again, credit to Miami, executed a game plan well. I thought Tua, even though he turned the ball over a lot, made some nice throws. Obviously, the receivers are great. Mike McDaniel's great. The tough part about looking at the Jets season, it felt like if you're a basketball fan, do you remember when the Nets traded all their picks for the Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce, and they were the worst team in the league? It feels like that. There's no incentive to winning because you can't, because you stink, and there's no incentive to losing because even though the Jets have a draft pick, there's real no wholesale is not going to this team. Nathaniel Hackett's the worst coordinator in the league. They're not going to fire Nathaniel Hackett. They're just not. Aaron Rodgers doesn't want it. Now, Aaron Rodgers holding the hostage is fine when he's playing for the Packers and winning 11 games every year and going to the playoffs and winning MVPs. When he's not, and you can't make any changes because of stuff like this, you might be worried about upsetting him. This is what you get. The worst offense in the league by a lot. And nothing's going to change. I know they benched Zach Wilson for Tim Boyle. Will Zach Wilson look better than Tim Boyle? Not a compliment. They're both terrible. They're both not NFL quarterbacks. That's not the win you think it is. This is just unwatchable. And I know Rodgers' defense, he said multiple times this season is, well, the offense works. I mean, I won 2 MVPs in this offense. It obviously is good. And like, kind of, yeah, but also screw you a little bit. Like, you know you're not a regular quarterback, Aaron Rodgers. You know that. The system is you. That's what makes it work. Tim Boyle or maybe Trevor Siemian or Zach Wilson can't make it work. And now they have this great defense that I think finally has just started to crack and almost give up a little bit because they're like, we're giving up 16 points and losing. The Jets haven't scored more than 13 points in a month and a half. It's just really, really sad. Especially because we were all supposed to get Aaron Rodgers and all the promise that came with Aaron Rodgers. And now here we are again talking about the Jets offense at the bottom. It really stinks. So it's rapid fire takes time. So we're just gonna really briefly glance over the rest of the Sunday schedule, and then we're gonna do our big Monday night preview for the Bears and the Vikings. We'll start with Steelers Bengals. It seems like there's not really a lot to go on in this game. I know people are taking victory laps for Kenny Pickett, even though he didn't throw a touchdown. He played okay. Now, okay is not what you want from your second-year franchise quarterback, but I think it at least proves the Steelers were right to get rid of Matt Canada because Matt Canada barely had Kenny Pickett throw beyond 5 yards. If Kenny Pickett's not a good quarterback, I think the Steelers should trade for an upgraded quarterback next year. Maybe I don't know Justin Fields if he becomes available. We'll get into that. But I at least like to see Pickett trying to move the ball down the field. They actually executed it for a little bit. And the Bengals defense is a no-joke defense. The Steelers have a cream-up schedule coming up soon. A lot of injured quarterbacks they're playing, a lot of young teams. I think this game may have been enough to just solidify them as a playoff team. Even with Pickett playing as poorly as he is generally, having Mike Tomlin, having that defense, man, that is just a game changer, a complete game changer. Falcons Saints. I've been a Derek Carr fan for a while because I think Derek Carr is a good quarterback. 4 Pro Bowls in 9 years with the Raiders. Always throws for a lot of yards and touchdowns. I think he's got a lot of arm talent, and he got stuck in some really crappy situations with the Raiders. Never had an amazing line. The one year he did, unfortunately, he got hurt for the playoffs. Defense was always a mess. I don't think it was ever ranked better than 23rd. He had the whole John Gruden situation he had to navigate as the quarterback and the leader, the situation he had to navigate as a leader and a quarterback. Did not get an easy hand. So I'm like, all right, in New Orleans, he goes to a division win. And yet here he is again, flirting with another top 10 pick. I believe the Saints have 3 offensive touchdowns in their last 2 games, one of which was Taysom Hill and 2 games. So I've had my criticisms of Pete Carmichael as a coach. I think that he's probably a coordinator you can get rid of. But I always got to step it up, man. He's got to step it up. I know that he's under contract for a couple years, and he'll be back next year. And he's going to give you, when he's healthy, enough base competency to be in games all the time because he's that good. But you got to start showing something, man. Otherwise, the narrative is just going to keep hammering you down if Derek Carr is overrated. I don't want to subscribe to that. If you keep playing like that, I'll have no choice. Colts Buccaneers. Everybody likes to throw out their coach of the year candidates. I got one who I'll talk about a little later in the show that I think should probably be the favorite right now. If you don't have Shane Steichen on that ballot, I don't know what you're doing. Steichen took over a team that was not expected to do much of anything, starting the incredibly mega raw Anthony Richardson. He had him really balling. He was running the ball well, just obliterating throws, just ripping them all down the middle. Richardson was dominating. Built an offense totally around him. And then he gets Gardner Minshew. And on the fly, changes to a completely different offense that, while sometimes crude and not always the most effective, they keep winning games. I feel bad for Baker Mayfield, who keeps losing these games because he's playing really well. I hope the Bucs maybe even contend for the division this year with Baker Mayfield. They're only like a game out, and he's played really well. He's never had continuity. I want to see Baker get more chances, but this game's about the Colts. I believe that the season right now they'd be in the playoffs, right out of it. And they're a legitimate team. Minshew always makes enough plays. I think the defense has really improved this season, even without Shaq, who they just got rid of. If they get Richardson back on this team, obviously not coming back this year, but if Richardson plays like he did as a rookie next year with mostly the same team, God, the AFC South is one of the best divisions in football. Jacksonville's not going anywhere. Houston's not going anywhere. And Tennessee, if they get an offensive line to support Levis, that division might be set on quarterbacks for 10 years. Everything goes well. Rams, Cardinals. A lot of the stuff I'm going to say about the Colts, I'm going to probably apply to the Rams and Sean McVay. The Rams were – I saw some people saying the Rams were in the Caleb Williams talk earlier in the year. This roster was destitute. It was on offense especially. It was Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, and a bunch of dudes. You can ask the most hard football fans, most knowledgeable. If you said name 3 players on the Rams offense that aren't Stafford and Kupp, you get some funny looks. And yet here they are. Stafford, 4 touchdowns. Kyron Williams, the next McVay star running back. They just keep grinding out wins. Schedule loosens up a little bit later in the year. Stafford is still playing really well. Puka Nacua continues to assert himself. If Kupp gets back to full health, look out for the Rams. I don't know if they're going to win a lot of playoff games this year if they get in it. I don't know how much of a threat they're going to be, but I think they certainly can get in it. NFC weak as hell. They get the experience of McVay and Stafford. Don't discount them, man. Objects in the rearview mirror closer than they appear, and the Rams just keep on coming. And Chiefs Raiders. Chiefs went down 14-0. I'm like, oh, this is looking grim. And finally, what I think Kansas City realized, the Kansas City team that, by the way, has nothing. They have one of the worst receiver corps. That's not a Patrick Mahomes excuse. He hasn't played like Patrick Mahomes. Still really good, just not Patrick Mahomes this year. But I think they finally realized Rashee Rice is their only path to confidence in that receiver room. They were just spamming Travis Kelce and Pacheco and Noah Gray until they were blue in the face, and then what do you know, Rice had a couple big plays. So he struggled early in the year, especially with drops. I wasn't the hugest fan of his SMU tape. I thought he had a very limited route, but oh boy, is this guy improved. It's weird to hear that Rice is the number one receiver on the team right now, but I think clearly now he is. If the Chiefs are very aggressive this offseason and they end up getting whoever the top available receiver, probably not Devontae Adams because that's in division, but I don't know if Mike Evans becomes available, if there's a big name on the free agent market, if they go get a number one like that and make the number two, maybe draft a number three with the first round pick, I think they'll be in good shape. And there's always rumors of Travis Kelce retiring, which would obviously completely rip the offense apart. There's a path to success if they end up doing that. And the Raiders, too, it's tough to evaluate the Raiders because I don't know what they're going to do at quarterback. I don't think Garoppolo's coming back. Aiden O'Connell looks like a fine backup for 10 years, but I can't see them going into week 1, 2024 with Aiden O'Connell as their starting quarterback. But I also think Antonio Pierce, even though the results haven't been there the last couple of games, they clearly love him. They're clearly playing hard for him. And I think that Pierce is going to end up winning he shouldn't and kind of taking them out of the range of the top two guys, Williams and May. And with how unsettled the rest of the class is, like who's quarterback number 3 in this draft? Is it Michael Penix? Is it Bo Nix? Is it Jane Daniels? Is it JJ McCarthy? Is it yours? Nobody knows. It's tough to evaluate the Raiders. But I will say, I at least think that the horridness of the Josh McDaniels era is behind him. So that's the biggest case of addition by subtraction you'll see, even with Mike getting fired on any team this year. And now it's Monday Night Football time. This late in the year is probably not as marquee of a matchup as Chiefs-Eagles was, but got some intrigue nonetheless. The Bears and the Vikings. It's typically been a throw the records out kind of game, NFC North kind of game. Let's start with the Bears first because this is truly one of the most unique situations I can remember for dealing with a young quarterback. Like, we were worried about this with the Cardinals and Kyler Murray, like, what are they gonna do with him? I think at this point, I'm leaning more towards they're gonna keep Kyler Murray, and they're probably gonna take, like, either a Marvin Harrison Jr. to get him a real receiver or just trade down and get a crazy haul. The Bears, I don't know about because the Bears have the top pick, and even if they don't end up with the top pick, they're surely gonna have at least one in the top 5 between their own pick in Carolina and multiple in the top 10 assuredly. So that's prime quarterback position. In a league where quarterback play I don't wanna go in and say quarterback play is regressing and there's a lack of it, but I will say there is a lack, I think, of average, like, mid-tier quarterback play. It's either you got your really good guy or a big mess. If you get a guy in Fields, like, I could see if Fields was in a big mess and you just go, "Alright, clean break, move off Justin Fields, and then we'll start our new era with whoever the coach is next year." Because Matt Eberflus is 100% not gonna return as the coach next year. That he's one of the most fired guys in the league. He's dead man walking. Then you got Justin Fields. What a peculiar evaluation he is because he is I hate reading this, but he's 6-26 as a starting quarterback. Wins are not a quarterback stat. I wanna say that. But I can see people who use wins as a quarterback stat will find it very hard to sell people on a 6-26, possibly 6-27 after this game, quarterback being dubbed the next franchise guy. But if you look at him, this year, I know he's not running as much as he did last year, but 62% completion, career high, 7.4 yards per attempt, career high, 12 touchdowns in 7 games just passing the ball. His touchdown percentage, the percentage of throws that are touchdowns, highest in the league. Only 6 interceptions, passer rating at 93.3. That's higher than a lot of really good quarterbacks in this league right now. He's doing that with a terrible offensive line, a terrible scheme. Like, I don't think Luke Getsy's a very good coordinator either. I think he's probably gonna be gone too. With one receiver, DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, whatever. With all that, Justin Fields has a higher passer rating than names like Trevor Lawrence, who's actually right next to him, Baker Mayfield, Joe Burrow, Geno Smith, Derek Carr, all these guys below Justin Fields. And you get elite athleticism with Justin Fields. I mean, half the time, the offense wasn't even working. Half the time, especially last year, the only time they got anything going was him making something out of nothing with his legs and his 4.4 speed. And those guys don't come around very often. So there is a real legitimate argument you can make. You know what? We saw improvement. Let's get him a real offensive coordinator, one more real receiver. We got a bunch of good picks. We can build him an offensive line. Darnell Wright, I know he struggled against the Lions, but I think Darnell Wright, the right tackle, is standing there. They need probably one or two more pieces. And let's see if we can make this guy work because he has so much base physical talent, and you see it flash so often. Just want to see more of it. But on the other hand, it's Caleb Williams, it's Drake May, and you're gonna have a coaching staff coming in that is not gonna have a lot of loyalty to Justin Fields. Teams will be after him, I believe, if they trade him. I mentioned Pittsburgh earlier. Maybe they can get him. Maybe Atlanta. They get sick of Desmond Ridder. He'll have a market, legitimately. I would be I'll put it out there right now for the Stacking the Box listeners. I would be shocked, legitimately, if Justin Fields is not a week one starting quarterback. That's how much I think he's a rare talent athletically. And he's got an arm. He just needs to speed things up with his process mentally. If he gets the right coach to talk to him, who knows? Now, the best way he could cement his value for anybody, for the Bears or any other team that wants to trade for him, it's tearing apart the Vikings. And I'm afraid just because this seems like a nightmare matchup for him. Because Fields, this is going to sound dumb to say about a quarterback, but Fields is at his best when he's got time and he can be in a rhythm because he can make most of the throws you need. The arm talent is undeniable, and the playmaking is undeniable. The problem with him is doing things. He always seems like he's like a half step slow on these things. And this might be the worst defense in the league to be a half step slow against because Brian Flores blitzes like crazy, number one. And number two, he's going to blitz like crazy against the aforementioned bad offensive line. So if Fields doesn't get the ball out quick, he might get sacked 8, 9 times today. And that's not an exaggeration. If he plays well against Minnesota, I think it'll go a long way towards rehabilitating his value and kind of getting the stink of he's a franchise guy off him at some point. Now, for the Vikings, I had mentioned this before in the show or hinted at it. If I right now, like, you had to put a gun to my head, who's your coach of the year? Kevin O'Connell. Kevin O'Connell. I know everybody was expecting a regression after last year. I did too, because they were 13-4 and they had a terrible defense and they went like 9-1 in one-score games. And then you know what? They haven't been as good this year, but season ended today. They're in the postseason. Even with Kirk Cousins tearing his Achilles, probably I think ending his Vikings threat, they'll probably draft a guy or get some new blood in instead of paying Kirk Cousins a ton of money at this stage. But even with that, above 500, offense is doing really well in the playoffs again. Maybe it's just really good coaching. Maybe Kevin O'Connell's just a really good coach. I think he is. He made a terrible decision on his first defensive coordinator hire, that Donatel. He then picked a really good replacement in Brian Flores, which that's part of being a good coach is good coordinator hiring, good personnel management of your staff. And here they are again to keep winning. Now, I know some of the blue came off the rose for Josh Dobbs in the Denver game. You saw some turnovers, you saw some missed throws, and you see why he keeps hopping around between a bunch of different teams. And the numbers aren't really jaw-dropping this year. I mean, he started 10 games. He played mostly in 11 too because he came in relief. 12 touchdowns, 6 picks, passer rating at 84.7. He's got some nice rushing stats, but nobody would look at Josh Dobbs and say that he's the primary reason the Vikings, I think, are winning games. But certainly good enough, I think, to get this team in the playoffs. He's playing a Bears defense that, well, I'll give him credit, have actually played pretty okay the last couple of weeks, and we spent a ton of money there on Tremaine Edmonds and Edwards and things like that. Earlier in the year, they couldn't stop anybody. Now they look like a real unit. Like there's a path to Josh. Like Josh Dobbs is not going to be. He's not just going to cruise to 300 yards. But I do think Josh Dobbs is going to rip off some big plays without Justin Jefferson. Jordan Addison has really come into his own as a receiver. I'm excited to see the Vikings when they get Justin Jefferson back. I would like to see Jefferson against this Bears secondary too, just selfishly because Jefferson's so good, and the Bears secondary could be good in a year or two, but these are a lot of young guys, a lot of rookies, a lot of second-year guys. So with that, you get volatility, and Jefferson wouldn't be the best matchup. Where I think this game is won is in one I mentioned earlier, Fields getting the ball out. If he doesn't do that, they're dead, and the Vikings gotta control the line of scrimmage. Offensive line is better than it was, still not amazing, but I really don't know what they're doing with their running game. Now, Dalvin Cook certainly would not have solved their issues, I think, because Dalvin Cook is washed and the Jets are showing. I feel like they don't really have a very concrete plan. Like, they kept trying Alexander Mattison, and I know Kevin O'Connell defended him, but Alexander Mattison is incredibly disappointing. 3.7 yards a carry, getting the ball a ton, not a receiving threat, just not great. Then you have Ty Chandler, who second-year guy, explosive guy, but he's also 5 years old. He's got what, like 50 career touches. Like the ceiling on Ty Chandler is not as high as people think it is, and it just seems like I get doing the hot hand. I don't know what they're doing. It's kind of we'll put Chandler in here, Madison here. Like it seems very concrete. They need a concise plan of attack in this game. Do I think they'll get it? Do I think Josh Dobbs goes crazy? Honestly, yes. Honestly, I think a shootout in this game. I'm gonna say Vikings 31, Bears 24. I think the Bears can put up 24 points on this defense. Vikings defense is improved, but I don't think the secondary can still really cover DJ more effectively. And for all the problems on that offense for the Bears, Fields and Moore are still really, really good together. They have a connection, legitimately. I think they'll put up some points. I think Fields will do one crazy Fields play that looks good. But I think eventually what'll win out is just wily gamesmanship of Josh Dobbs. 2 syllables, still messed it up. Josh Dobbs and this Vikings offense. Like, every time I think that the roof's gonna cave in and he's gonna run out of pixie dust, proves me wrong. So because of that, I'm just gonna take the hot hand. I know the Vikings. I'm not sure what the line is right now. I believe I saw 5.5, 6.5 most places. I'd take that. I'd take the over on that. I think the Vikings will close to it, and I think that the Vikings may lock themselves in as a postseason team because I think the schedule's easing up a little bit, and I think they're only going to make just enough plays to survive until Jefferson gets back, and then this offense can really start kicking. So thank you guys for joining the Week 12 recap. As always, subscribe to Stacking the Box on YouTube. Make sure to download the podcast on all the podcast platforms. We're on all there, Apple, Google, Spotify. We're on all of them. Make sure to check out the Jet Press where you'll see me on Wednesdays and after every Jets game if you just want to see this big ugly mug more often. So until then, thanks for joining us. I've been Mike Luciano. I'll see you guys next Monday.